Effective objection management is not about you win or I win. It is about win-win. This is objection management is not some Jedi Knight strategy to get your way. That's called manipulation. When we think about objection management, sometimes we think of it as a bit of a zero-sum game, that one of us is going to win here. We're either going to get your way or I'm going to get my way. It's like it's a piece of pie and we're arguing for a cake to see who can get the biggest piece there. Now, when we study some of the research in and around objection management, but the way I look at it is, let's see if we can find an outcome that's better for both of us. Because if it's just my way and not yours, that's not going to work. And if it's just your way and not mine, that's not going to work either. Okay, your community needs you getting really, really good at objection management. This will help you save more lives. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I have the pleasure of simplifying the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through the chiropractor's guide to addressing patient objections. Now, why is this important? In fact, I believe this should be up there as one of probably the top 5 skills that we develop as a chiropractor. Mastery in objection management allows you to build greater trust, greater rapport with our patients. It'll allow you to demonstrate empathy and understanding. It'll show that you have a real commitment to addressing and understanding their concerns. We are in the trust game, okay? That's it. If you have a skill set where you can build massive amounts of trust with people in your community, your practice will grow very, very rapidly. When you develop the skills of objection management, your patients will be much more likely to feel seen and understood, and this will lead to an increase in compliance, retention, referrals, all those things there too. You'll make sure that your practice members receive the best care. Okay, so they'll get the care that is best for them. If we can understand the objections that often come up along the way, you'll be able to educate your patients more effectively. You'll be able to involve your patients in the decision-making process. So it doesn't show up as us being like the boss. When we can engage them in the process, again, retention will be better. Involvement, them implementing your care plan will be much better as well. This will all end up with a whole bunch more satisfied practice members, and you know what that means. Okay, more referral, more income, more impact, more enjoyment, all of those things kind of happen as well. Now, before we kind of get into this, a couple of things I want to teach you, because when we look at objection management, there tends to be often 2 different paths that we go down, or what people want. I'm not going to teach you some kind of Jedi mind trip where you can have people automatically choose the thing that you want to choose. Okay, that's not called objection management. That's called manipulation. And manipulation, while it might serve you in the short term, it never serves your practice and it'll never serve your community in the long term. Okay. Now, the other key thing that we've got to realize here is that also when we think about objection management, sometimes we think of it as a bit of a zero-sum game, that one of us is going to win here. We're either going to get your way or I'm going to get my way. It's like it's a piece of pie and we're arguing for a cake to see who can get the biggest piece there. Now, when we study some of the research in and around objection management, there's different ways to look at this. But the way I look at it is, let's see if we can find an outcome that's better for both of us, okay? Because if it's just my way and not yours, that's not going to work. And if it's just your way and not mine, that's not going to work either. But how can we come to something that never existed beforehand, okay? This is an integral way of us thinking about it. So again, this is not about manipulation. This is not about you getting your way. It's not about the practice member getting their way. Again, if they get their way, but it means they're not getting the care they need to get the results they want, they don't win. Okay, and neither do you in those scenarios. And so I want to walk you through, the 6 key considerations that if you want to become a master of objection management, these are things that you need to start to think about. The first is, step number 1 is that you must stay calm and open. So for many of us, and myself in the past, that when objections come up, a dialogue starts to go inside of my mind. They don't like me. This is going to be difficult. They don't want what I have to recommend. And this sets you off completely on the wrong foot. And so in terms of having a reflective mindset, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to assume positive intent. I was talking with 2 of our wonderful chiropractors, Amy and Tanya, the other day, and we were talking about objection management. And I said, be worried about the objections that don't come to you. If a patient is actually bringing their objections to you, it's because they want a solution. They want to continue to work with us, okay? So assume that they are seeking understanding. They want to, they have genuine concern rather than opposition, okay? We need to learn to embrace objections as an opportunity, all right? This is an opportunity for you to deepen the relationship. And so if I have somebody reach out to me with an objection, now that's how I see it. Positive intent, and this is an opportunity for us to deepen our relationship. So don't get defensive. This might mean that you need to pause before responding. Take a moment, okay? Acknowledge the question. We'll talk about that in a moment. couple of deep breaths before diving straight in. So this will not only allow you to formulate a much more thoughtful answer, but it'll demonstrate that the concern is taken seriously, okay? So step number 1 is stay calm and stay open. This is also going to need to be reflected in your body language. So whilst many of us will withdraw back in, we'll look away from the patient, our breathing might become a whole bunch more rapid. We want to make sure that we maintain appropriate eye contact, that our body language stays really open is this as well. We want to use verbal cues for receptiveness, phrases like, I understand, thanks for sharing that with me. That's what I'll often start with. Wow, thanks for sharing that with me, okay? This gives me a chance to breathe and think about it also, but it's a sign of receptiveness. It means that we're not going to be defensive, because if we become defensive, they are too, and that changes the whole tone for the dialogue going forwards. The next thing we're going to need to do is really clarify the objection. Now, a number of episodes ago, I went through 6 different layers of objection. Now, what I wanted to teach you inside of that, and I'm going to suggest that you go back to that episode. I'll have that linked in the show notes as well. But know that if somebody comes back and says that, hey, listen, this seems like it's too expensive, or it's too often, I can't get here 3 times a week, there can be several different reasons why that might be. The cost is not always about the cost. Do they, first of all, do they trust you? Is there agreement about the problem? Could it be that they lack their own confidence in being able to follow through? If we can't clarify what the real problem is, we need to look deeper than the surface as well. So remember, there are 6 different layers of objection that can come up, and rather than me going into those on this episode, go back and listen to that previous episode. I'll link it into the show notes there. But in essence, what I want to say here is that you need to clarify before proceeding. All right. In fact, what I will do, let me give you just an overview, okay? Those objections, it could be disagreement around what the problem is, okay? And this often happens because, remember, we're often putting forwards a solution to a lifetime of build-up of stress on their spine and nervous system, and they think they're solving headaches that started last week, okay? So that's disagreement around the problem. Disagreement around the solution is, look, we agree that this is a lifetime of stress build-up, but I don't understand how 3 times a week for the next 12 weeks is going to solve this, okay? That's disagreement in around the solution, okay? So again, if this objection came up, I need to solve these in different ways. So one of them, I need to go back and go, hang on. You think the problem just started 2 weeks ago. It didn't. Here's why, okay? It could be number 3, a lack of confidence in their ability to implement the solution, all right? It could be a lack of confidence in the way they see you to implement it, okay? It could be concern in around side effects. It could be just an administrative issue, like they don't know that you work afternoons, okay? And again, it could be psychological resistance to change. So those are those 6 layers of objection. So we want to find out, which layer is it coming from, and we need to make sure that we're solving it. Often there's multiple layers there too, but just as simple for you to understand here is that we need to dive deeper. Cost isn't always about cost. Frequency and duration isn't always about just frequency and duration. It doesn't mean that they're not taking their health seriously. And if we bounce back with something like this, come on, you've got to take your health seriously. This is a serious problem. If we do that and we don't try to solve the right problem there too, then you lose trust. The next thing that you need to do after you have identified what the problem is that we need to validate their concerns. Remember, as human beings, one of the things that we're constantly searching for is to be seen and heard. We want to be validated for our problems, our concerns, our objections in this scenario too. And if we don't do that, then we're going to have a real difficult problems in sort of overcoming their objection. Now, here's an important thing to consider. Validation doesn't mean agreeing. Validation, if somebody says, hey, listen, that seems like a lot, Angus, I'm not sure I can get here 3 times a week. If we validate that, doesn't mean that we agree with it, but we can go back and say, hey, listen, thanks, Sarah, for bringing that up to me. 3 times a week does sound like a lot for a lot of my patients. So I'm just letting her know that what the objections that she's raised are valid, okay? And so, but if I immediately don't validate it and I bounce over the top of it and I try, again, what validating does is it shows genuine empathy. It expresses understanding, okay? So I completely understand why that might worry you, okay? Many of my patients feel the same way at first, okay? Your concerns are important to me. Let's see if we can get them addressed. These type of things validate somebody's concerns. Again, it builds connection, it builds trust between the two of us, and it builds rapport. And it opens up for the avenue for much further dialogue. It invites more sharing because then we can start to get into deeper layers. One of the most important things that you can do is validate somebody's concerns. Okay, so whatever they tell you the reason is, reassure them that's okay. That makes sense, that it's difficult for you. Okay, let's see if we can find a solution. Now, only now can we move into educating. Okay, so if we've identified what the problem is, we've remained super calm through the process there too. We've assumed the best intent. We've found out what the layer of resistance is. We've validated now. We've educated. Now, here's what most chiropractors do when they come to educating is they go back and they just say the same thing that didn't work beforehand, but they often say it louder or a little bit slower, or they enunciate it more. If the first way that you went about explaining subluxation or why they need to come in with this frequency of care or what happens with adjustments, if that doesn't work, then you need to go back to another. So maybe you did something verbally. Let's use some images. Let's have some pictures that we might draw. Let's go back to the x-rays. We want to incorporate visual aids. We want to adopt different metaphors. So I want to encourage you to have in your arsenal a bunch of different metaphors that help to explain the need for care, the frequency of care, the duration of care, how subluxation shows up in their life. And then what we're doing is we're assessing for comprehension. So we should be doing this along the way. We don't want to wait until there's an objection. But when you're taking somebody through their films, we're watching for their body language. They might be saying yes, but their body language might be saying no. Maybe their head is shaking. Maybe they're having difficulty remaining in eye contact. Maybe their breathing has become more shallow. We want to observe patient cues: arms crossed, frowning, blank stare, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting. And so if we see that this is happening, we might want to just stop for a moment. I had this scenario recently in a staff meeting where, we were getting some agreement on ways to go forwards and everybody said yes, but one of the staff members was clearly a no. I could see it by body language, and we needed to dive back into that in a really kind and reassuring way, validate her concerns, fix up some of the issues from the past there before I could get a proper yes from her. So just because somebody says yes doesn't mean that they mean yes. And so as we go to educate, the idea is that we need to go about educating in a different way. Okay, so use a varied explanation. Don't just say the same thing that you said beforehand, but louder or a little bit slower. And then once we've done this, what we want to do is we want to confirm understanding and agreement. Does this make sense now? Okay. Do you feel more comfortable with the plan now? Now, again, this sort of thing we're able to check back in. We've got active listening going on. We've got a conversation happening. Now, from here, and only from this step, can we then determine the next steps based on the patient response, okay? So even many cases, what happened is the objection can be resolved. If we've done a good job at this stage, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. We've identified where the problems come. We've validated through there too, and we've re-educated. I get it now. Nobody really wants to come in 3 times a week, but I understand why that is necessary now, or I understand why this is going to take this length of time. But we might also get at this stage where I get it, Angus. I understand that there's a lifetime of stress built up on my spine, and I understand how chiropractic is going to help me, but getting here 3 times a week is I just can't do it at the moment. We need to see if we can find another solution. So at this stage here, after step 4, educating, what we want to do is, when appropriate, we want to offer alternatives. Now, this is something that is very personal for each of us. We need to find out, where do we offer alternatives, and do we offer any alternatives at all? Now, there was a time in my practice career where it was my way or the highway. It's these are recommendations. You either want to take them on or you don't. Now, I wasn't an asshole about it. In fact, I was in the early stages because I wasn't very good at this stuff there too. But by the end there, I was totally cool about it. And I could have somebody not start care without them feeling wrong or like I was a prick or any of those type of things there too. But we would just talk about, hey, listen, this is what required. And I know if you can't get here 3 times a week, I can't do my great work with you. And I'm worried that you won't get the results that you really need. But let me send you to somebody else who might be able to work with you in this way. But I'm confident that this is what we need. So I would have a conversation like that. And 99 times out of 100, that relationship could finish and we could both feel really good about it. Okay. But in the early days, if I wasn't good about that at all. So you need to work out, where can you go? So in many cases for me, I had a lot of learning experiences in the early days. Most of my new patients started 3 times a week with their adjustments. We did that. They saw great results. And for the last 8 or so years in practice, I only worked 2 days. And so I couldn't see people 3 times a week. I could send them to an associate. And so I started seeing people twice a week, and I saw no change at all in the results that I got for the vast majority of people. Now, this was on their scans that I was looking for. This is on the results they were feeding back to me. This is what I was seeing as a chiropractor. And I found that interesting. Now, there were some people that certainly we had to find another time for them to get another adjustment. Sometimes that meant they saw me twice in the one day, or they went to my associate. We found ways to go about this too. But lots of the rules that I thought were black and white in the early days, I realized weren't. So you need to establish your non-negotiables, clearly identify which part of your care plan is flexible and which isn't. And then you need to educate on core principles, okay? So now, as I was doing this, once somebody started to change the rules for what my best recommendations were, there was a standard conversation I would say with them, and it would be something like, Again, that's great. If we're going to come in twice a week with that too, there's a couple of things that we need to understand, Sarah. The first is this, is it's going to take a little longer to get the results that you want. And maybe the results might not be quite as good. Are you okay with that? Now, that's once I throw that out there too, and she says, absolutely, then I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to throw a high five virtually and go, great, let's get started. Let's test this over the next 4 weeks and see how we go. And if everything is proceeding fabulously, then we just keep on that path. And if it's not, then let's revisit it. Does that sound like a great plan? So when I knew where my non-negotiables were, and they depended on a lot of things, and it's probably too hard for me to break it down, but we all know in our gut, what are we willing to try, to test and see in this? And where we get ourselves into trouble with this is that if we change the rules over, and Sarah's a couple of weeks into adjustments, and she comes and she says, Angus, these headaches are still killing me. What's going on? Is there anything else we can do? I can revisit that conversation that we had earlier on and say, first of all, I'm going to validate her concerns. Okay, this is an objection she's got coming up. I'm so sorry to hear that. It must be incredibly frustrating. I might ask her a question. Why do you think that is? See what she has to say about it too. And then somewhere along the lines, an avenue is going to open up for me to say something like, I wonder if one of the reasons that things are responding a little bit more slowly is because we're not getting adjusted often enough, as is. Remember the report of findings I talked about, that it takes repetition for our body to get into its pattern for adjustments, and we're getting adjusted twice a week at the moment instead of 3 times a week. I think that might be a problem. What do you think? So part of all of this objection management, and a part of this is, you'll notice that I'm asking lots of questions. I don't want to be telling people what to do when I can have them tell themselves what to do, because Sarah in this situation might say, yeah, I get it. I think I might need to come in more often. And I would go, I think that's a great idea. How are we going to manage that? How do we fit that into your schedule? I think it's only going to be for the next 4 to 6 weeks. I know things are difficult with work and kids and life, but getting these headaches solved is clearly a priority also. So again, when appropriate, offer alternatives. Now, sometimes that means that we just have to draw the line and say, I'm not the doc for you. We can't move forwards. But you might find that there is room for this. Now, here's one of the things. Once you engage in a collaborative decision-making, we go through this, make the decision together, we clarify the consequences. This is something that chiropractors don't do great, is that we don't let people know what the consequences are of them not turning up for their adjustments, not following through with their exercises, not following through with all of your recommendations. But we do that in a way that, is often manipulative or fear-based, instead of just being really transparent. Hey, it's going to take a little longer. The results aren't going to be good. In this case, choosing a less frequent adjustment schedule might make it easier for you to get in here as well. But it's going to mean that your results are going to take a little bit longer. Is that okay with you? I kind of went through that as an example beforehand as well. Now, the final thing that we need to do with this is that we need to confirm understanding, okay? So if we have gone through objection management, and if we've decided to, make a change in our recommendations, whatever that we've decided upon too, what we want to do here is we want to make sure that we don't withdraw. I'm going to call it here withdraw our love. So because sometimes when we go through and we change it, then we'll go, all right, well, let's see if this works for you, okay? If you're not going to come in as I recommended, you're on your own now. I don't want to do that. I'm going to celebrate. It's great. We're going to get started twice a week here too. Fingers crossed everything works fantastic. That's what we're going to be working at here as well. We know it might take a little bit longer, but let's get started and see. So I'm going to just be boots and all in on this, okay? I'm not going to withdraw back there too. So we're going to clarify the final step, confirm understanding there too. Great. Let's get started. I'm excited to move forwards there as well. But, as long as we're clear that results might take a little bit longer, and we're going to really seek explicit consent. Okay, so I'm going to note that down on the thing through there too. Are you comfortable moving forwards with the plan as we discussed? Great. Any other questions? Is there anything else that we need to deal with as well? And if there is, sometimes this opens up into another one. Okay, so we want to make sure that we emphasize collaboration, and if we have changed things over in some way, we want to make sure that we schedule a follow-up. So in this situation where Sarah's changed her care plan from 3 times a week to twice a week, great. I'm going to make a little note down that we check back in this 4 weeks' time. Of course, we're going to be checking with you every visit, but we'll kind of really make sure we draw a line in the sand in 4 weeks and see how this is working for you, okay? Is that all right? Yes, we've gone through and we've done that too. So let's review this. All right, 6 phases when we're thinking about objection management. The first one is objection management is not some Jedi Knight strategy to get your way. That's called manipulation. Effective objection management is not about you win or I win. It is about win-win. There's 6 things that we need to think about. We need to stay calm and open, okay? So part of this is we're going to assume best intention from the people that we're dealing with. We're going to take it slowly. We're going to breathe as well. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to clarify the objection. What is the problem really, okay? We're going to validate their concerns. Now, often they'll tell us one layer of the objection, and then we'd validate their concerns and others start to come out. We're then going to educate. That's step number 4. But we're going to do this in a different way to what we did it originally. Saying the same thing over again and again, expecting a different result is one of the definitions of insanity, okay? Then, when appropriate, we're going to offer alternatives, okay? Is there an alternative that's available? Can we test this? And as we do this, we make sure that we communicate what are the consequences of this. We make sure that we stay in partnership with them. This is a collaborative decision. We don't withdraw our love or our affection in this scenario here too. We let them know that we're with them 100% of the way. And finally, we confirm understanding and support. Now, this is a skill set, okay? And lots of things I teach you here on the podcast are skill sets. And for some of you, they will come naturally. And for others, you'll have to really work on this. I need to continue work on this myself. And I constantly work my way through the keys of all of these. There's lots of things that will really help you, but stay calm, assume best intent, and then validate their concerns. If those 2 things alone you take from this, you're going to build such massive amounts of rapport with your patients, and trust will go up. And that by itself, those items there will help you get over a lot of objections. This is a key skill. It's learnable with practice and with repetition. And it's one of the fundamental skill sets that we need to have as a chiropractor, because it helps out every element of your practice, not only with your patients, but with your associates and with your staff as well. Okay, your community needs you getting really, really good at objection management. This will help you save more lives. As always, folks, thanks for all that you do. Keep saving lives. I look forward to seeing you back here next week. See you, folks. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer Program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspike.com/join. That's anguspike.com/join. I'd love to see you there.